Our focus today is on curriculum planning and design, and I want to cover this from an understanding of key tenets of curriculum planning and design. So I will try and expose or I'll lead this conversation by walking you through those key components. Now, by definition, curriculum is an academic plan which usually includes the purpose of the curriculum, that is the goals for students learning, content that is to be covered, sequencing, that is the order in which learning will be experienced, instructional methods, instructional resources, evaluation approaches, and how adjustments will be made to the plan, depending on how learning or actual execution of learning activities occur. The first aspect I want to cover is what we call constructive alignment. Now, alignment involves working from the intended learning outcomes, designing teaching and learning activities that are needed to build on the relevant skills, knowledge, competencies, and skill sets that are so required for a particular unit, okay? So this, of course, will lead us to the learning outcomes that we need. Now, additionally, we are talking about assessment tasks that are designed to, showcase the achievement of those skills and competencies. And so when you talk about constructive alignment, we are looking at three core concepts here. We are looking at learning outcomes and how they are, mapped with learning tasks and, of course, the learning assessments. So we're looking at learning outcomes mapped with assessment tasks and, of course, learning activities. Now, many times I've seen scenarios where assessment tasks are not in tandem with the learning activities and with the learning outcomes. And this is what constructive alignment tends to address. Besides constructive alignment, I also want to address the issue of deep and surface approaches to learning. Meaning is not usually imposed on the learners or transmitted directly to these learners, but it's created by the activities that students do conduct or engage in classes. Good teaching, therefore, encourages deep approach to learning, whereas poor teaching encourages students to take surface approach to learning. Deep learning shifts the teacher's focus and attention from the learners, from the teacher himself or herself to the learners. So the learners take center stage. They are central to the teaching learning interaction. And it does recognize students as very key critical stakeholders. Okay? Now, these are not static. The activities that students will be conducting in the class are not static, but rather vary according to individual students' interests and motivation, the learning circumstances, and the quality of teaching and learning that happens in our classes. There is an author called Biggs, and he opines that students really needs to move from low-level engagement towards the high-order ones, more complex, high-order level paths. And this hierarchy is so much in tandem with Bloom's taxonomy. We try to move from memorizing, note taking, describing, explaining, relating, moving upwards up to a place high up in the cognitive domain where we talk about now theorizing. But it's worth noting that at surface level down here, students engage in their learning by memorizing content. That's what we're trying to insinuate. However, these students are not able to make more links between information that we are trying to cover, and they are not either able to theorize from the given data, okay? And so our roles as teachers should be to assist students to swiftly, seamlessly move from the lower level learning through upper levels of engagement. And this is what we call good teaching, which translates to deep teaching. Now, I've already talked about Bloom's taxonomy, but it's the third concept that I really would have wanted to address. So Benjamin Bloom and colleagues in 1956 blessed academia with a six-layered triangle in which he gives us what are famously known as Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so these are categories of learning behaviors that we really expect from the learners, and they range from the lower order ones, like I've talked about, that is knowledge, comprehension, application, moving up to analysis, towards synthesis, and finally evaluation. And of course, there are verbs that are attached to them that we really need to be aware of. But I wanted to make mention that later, I think in 2001, another author called Anderson and his colleague refocused this Bloom's taxonomy and extended it to create what is called metacognition. That is how we learn about learning, which has been arguably celebrated as a more succinct and easily applied version of this Bloom's taxonomy, especially for teachers when you're doing curriculum designing. Now, I want to move to our fourth aspect, which is active learning. And active learning indeed is it does involve writing, discussion, engaging in problems that involve higher order thinking tasks, such as analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And of course, this is why it closely relates to Bloom's taxonomy and relates to deep learning as opposed to surface learning. So when you're teaching in when you're teaching in higher order thinking, when you're teaching higher order thinking skills, we are becoming more aware that if we treat our students, like passive recipients of information, we are missing the point. We are missing the opportunity for effective learning engagement. And of course, the challenge for teachers is to find ways to deeply engage a learner in these higher order thinking activities. Okay, we should be able to align the curriculum and the current knowledge activities with the learning goals of particular courses and promote this critical thinking and intellectual openness. And so at this level, I think we'll be talking about creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and creating communication and creating that kind of community of inquiry that cherishes and fosters higher order thinking. Of course, at times it comes with heavy cognitive load, but it's the best thing we can do to our learners. So in active learning, we are talking about beginning with a brief explanation, if possible. Okay? Then moving ahead and introducing and implementing the activity that you have talked about. And finally, summarizing and or sharing the learning outcomes or the learning activities that should be taken into consideration. This reminds me of what we call gradual release approach. Okay, I do, we do, you do. Okay, and that is very, very important. Now, another element that I want to talk about in curriculum design is what is called blended learning. Of course, this refers to learning designs that tend to incorporate both face-to-face and online mediums of instruction and activity. Now, this may include flipped classrooms formats, as well as using technology in our classes. I think most colleges and schools tend to now do blended learning. There are some elements of technology affordances incorporated in our teachings, and I think blended learning is being really celebrated as a powerful way of meaningfully impacting on our students. And so I'm not talking about students who are fully into online medium, but I'm talking about using aspects of technology to reinforce learning. Okay, but you could be using technology to teach and also learn. Okay, but the last component or aspect that I want to cover under curriculum design is what we call flipped classroom. Now, when you talk about flipped pedagogy, we are looking at that kind of learning that inverts traditional teaching methods, so that the typical lecture or and homework elements of the course are reversed. Okay, this means therefore that instruction is delivered online, outside of classwork, and what students would normally do in class is done at home or it's moved to another place, right? Okay, so when we talk about flipping the classroom, flipping simply means that the students will gain first exposure to new materials outside the classroom, okay, outside our classes. And this is usually done via reading books, getting video materials, and then using class time to clarify on gray areas or to focus on those harder work of assimilation of the knowledge that has been so acquired. Perhaps through problem solving, discussion, and or debates. So it's very important that we flip learning, because it also does help with differentiated instructions. Students or slow learners, or they tend to get something to think about, and when they come to class, the concepts are solidified, are demystified, and made easier for them to get deconstructed, so that it's easier for them to understand them. Okay, so these aspects that I've talked about in curriculum design and planning and design are very important. I hope they help you in your classroom activities. Thank you.